Welcome, 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 and thank you so very much for joining me on another episode of Talking Innovation. Now, this is where we talk about all the unbelievable, incredible, I kind of stuttered that out, unbelievable, incredible things that are going on in the world of technology, with AI, with computing, with quantum, everything. It's touching everything, and we're here to talk about it. I'm here to just let everybody have a story because, there's so many amazing people out in the world that just know so much more than certainly me. And I love to talk with them and learn more about what kind of innovation is going on in their life. And I've told you so many times, I'm just the Gilligan man. I'm not the professor. I'm not an expert on anything, but I find them and I talk with them and we get to hear from them. And today is going to be a real fun one, I know, because today I have someone he's not in a cybersecurity vendor. In fact, he's in a completely different business in the world of sterile processing. Okay. So, it's first time I ever even gave it any thought, quite frankly, until I started planning to have Michael on the program.
Right.
And so I'm excited to have Michael Compton Jr. joining me. We're here to talk about the innovation that's going on, at least I am, that's happening in this space and whatever else you want to talk about, Michael. So welcome.
Grant, it's such an honor and privilege. It was an amazing experience meeting you on the plane in Nashville, I believe it was.
Yeah, that's right.
I felt your energy. We shared a couple thoughts. We connected right away. I think you were about to do a speech.
I think that's right.
Yeah, you were on fire and you were inspiring. And I thought to myself, it would be great to have a conversation in the future. And here we are, over a year later, doing this podcast. I'm very humbled and looking forward to what we get into.
Yeah, well, I was actually kind of jazzed when I saw you respond on the post, since I rebranded and I'm going to Talking Innovation instead of Talking Cloud. And so I definitely, it warmed my heart and I smiled. And so I was happy to reach back and get this set up. So I'm glad you're here. So thanks for that too. I appreciate the kind words. I'm really, I was just diving into this and I'd never even thought about some of this stuff that is happening in your world from an AI influence. And one of the things right away was how, I've had surgery before,
right,
to inspect the minute gears and teeth and things in surgical equipment. I mean, that's something people have done for years, but now are they actually starting to utilize vision with AI to do that?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I've actually been able to see some of the demonstrations of this new technology, and it is revolutionary. It's going to change everything in our industry, because what it's going to do primarily is it's going to clarify a lot of the junk data and establish clear information that we can work on. And it's going to do a lot of things. It's going to help us find instrumentation. It's going to help organize information and data. And that's where I see it the most. The thing I'm most excited about right now, though, is this technology that helps the technician as they build quality sterile trays in the operating room. Prior to the sterilization process, you have to assemble the tray itself. And
the pieces the surgeon's going to need for that particular surgery, right? Because there's different tools and utensils for different types of surgery, right?
Yes, sir. And there's a lot that goes into it. And if I could take you through the process, that might help just to give you a high level overview.
It's crazy. I mean, I've had surgeries before. I bet you just about everybody listening has had one or knows someone that's had one. So yeah, I'm all ears.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Because I want to get to these robots, these robot assists that help deliver more quality trays in a quicker amount of time. But before we get there, we should probably start where a lot of people don't even know exists, which is this place called decontamination. In every hospital after surgery, the instruments that have been used and they're soiled from the surgery, bones, blood, etc.
Mm,
Those trays are taken to a department called sterile processing in a case cart, a biohazard labeled case cart that's enclosed, so that there's a safe delivery of the instrumentation to the department that's probably the most infected in the whole hospital. And
mm,
that's you start in decontamination after receiving the trays from the operating room, and then that's where the technician with their personal protective equipment, they render the instrumentation safe to touch on the other side by properly inspecting it, analyzing it for rust, bioburden, pitting,
mm,
and ensuring that when that instrument goes to the clean side, which we call pack and prep or assembly, that it's safe to the touch, so that you don't have to wear gloves if you don't want to.
mm-hmm,
So that's the process of decontamination. We use chemicals, we use tools, we use brushes, all types of different instruments in order to render that instrument safe to touch.
mm-hmm.
And then after we put the instruments together in a container, and we containerize, or a tray rather, we containerize the tray, put that tray into a sterilizer, and after it meets the proper parameters and the proper time, then it's rendered sterile, as long as every single step of the process was properly handled
Right,
and performed. So there's a big issue. People think it's very easy because if you go into SPD, the issue is a lot of people don't understand that it isn't just washing dishes, it isn't just washing instruments. It isn't just telling someone, "Hey, this is follow this count sheet, look at the instruments, and then put them in a tray." Well, is the count sheet accurate? Are the numbers on the instrument even there? We're working with hundreds of thousands of instruments,
mm.
are working with different people from different backgrounds, different generations, and it's getting all the more difficult. So I'm very excited that AI is here to help us with managing all of our processes and mainly the data. That's the piece I'm
Mm.
most excited about.
I was just reading, so I tried to do a little bit of homework, ahead of time, knowing we were going to talk to you. And one of the things that caught my eye, and I think I mentioned this to you before, was that, and this is a commonality for cybersecurity, and the whole retirement cliff is real. And in your business, there's a lot of experienced techs that are saying, "Okay, I'm done, I'm out."
That's right.
And then you have a high percentage of the population that's moving into those twilight years and consequently needing more surgeries. And so with that kind
Right.
of diametrically opposed, how's technology helping there? Is it coming in and easing that whole pain?
In in one sense, it has begun, but not to the level that I believe it will. We're unfortunately in sterile processing and really in surgical services at large, we are behind the curve. There's other industries that have been utilizing AI and lean principles and all these forward technologies advancing
Yeah.
their industries. I believe we're 15, 20 years behind the automotive industry, for example. And it's frustrating because we're talking about human lives. We're talking about infection prevention, ultimately sterile processing. We're
Yeah.
preventing infections because no one
Wow.
can afford, there's not a hospital out there that's going to be able to afford to provide brand new instruments, use them one time on a patient, throw them away, and then purchase new ones for the next.
I've heard also about this, you know, sterility as a service or sterilization as a service, right? Where you don't necessarily have that whole process on site, but there's
Now we're talking,
a
Matt.
service. Yeah,
Now we're talking here because thank you so much for saying that. And the industry has been known, sterile processing, as a non-revenue generating industry,
yeah.
unfortunately, because
Well,
I
I can see how it's non-revenue generating, but boy, oh boy, is it risk reducing.
absolutely,
Or risk increasing. I would think
absolutely,
every
keeping it
hospital would want
manageable.
to get that stuff out of here, put it in the barrel, call them to pick it up, have them bring it back shiny and clean. I mean, that seems like there's some real there, no?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we're like I said before, Grant, we're behind, and the reason why I believe is because 20 years in the game, working for tons of different consulting companies, starting my own Salute Surgical, and I say this just to say the reason why I'm starting my own company, and I've been working with helping C-suite leaders all over the country understand how critical sterile processing is. I believe is because partly of what you're saying, a lot of people are leaving, and there's a new workforce entering into the industry, but also because there's new standards. And to be frank and to be transparent, the industry hasn't been taken serious as professionals. And part of that, I believe, is on us. And we need to work on bettering the way that we articulate ourselves, the way that we present ourselves. And the
Mm-hmm.
other part is that I believe we've been overlooked. We're not looked at as surgical technologists that are right there with the in the operating room with the nurses and doctors. We're sort of the people downstairs in the basement.
Yeah,
And
garbage people. You pick up the garbage. No offense, but I mean, it's like,
very
oh, he
close.
he's the maid service. He's the one that cleans this up here. Take this tray, right?
Absolutely.
And I can see where
Yeah.
the perception is not an accurate representation of the reality when it comes to the criticality of that cog in the workflow.
Well said. And it's becoming all the more critical and it's becoming all the more intense and comprehensive. And what I mean by that is we're we've been looked at as, a surgical services department support um, team, sort of. So basically, we've been looked at as someone that can help surgery. But I believe that that needs a change, and this is what I believe that I'm called to do, is to help shine a light on the fact that not only are we infection preventionists, but in a way, we're scientists. And what I mean by that is see us as indirect healthcare providers. We're not necessarily there with the patient. And I say that because a lot of times when I'm reporting to wonderful people that mean well, they're trying to understand my world from a direct patient care perspective a lot of times instead of a warehouse, an assembly line, using chemistries and managing people from different backgrounds that sometimes have learning disabilities, sometimes have more difficult times understanding higher level critical thinking because they haven't
Right,
had good mentorship and or they haven't had much education, but they
right.
can receive that, and that's something that I'm trying to help with as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting stuff. Because you're kind of uh, between the OR and arguably the basement, right? And that diplomat between those two,
Yes,
which is kind of interesting. So
they call it
talk
the
to me,
dungeon sometimes.
yeah. So talk to me more about how real time data has changed the conversation when a surgeon's waiting, say for a specific what scope. I'm
Yeah,
looking at what it says.
sure. Or like a specific tray, or why isn't the tray there on time?
Right.
Right. And so that my response is twofold, Grant. One is I when I find myself in that position where the patient is on the table, for example, the tray
Right.
is in the room, I ask myself two questions. One is why is the patient here prior to the tray being here? So that
Yeah.
means to me there's a couple different communication failures, and one is the operating room because in my opinion, the operating room shouldn't allow a patient to reach the back table until they verify that all the instrumentation is there. But we know the world is tough. There's a lot of surgeries going on. A lot of people are communicating, and sometimes there's a rush and things happen. The other part of it is when you don't have what you needed. You usually that or from time to time, I should say, it's because that tray might have been taken from a case cart and used on another case cart, and then that wasn't communicated well with. And primarily, this happens primarily due to the fact that again, we're not really seen as high level professionals. Therefore, we're not treated as such, and
Mm,
that causes a lot of us in the field to have very little support and
mm,
therefore very little accountability, a
mm.
little address of the issues that are leading to the fact that we don't have the right processes in place.
Yeah.
And
I
what it is.
Michael, all I think of is uh, just in time
Sure.
manufacturing,
Yeah.
right? Which is the norm, right?
Right.
And it requires a tightly orchestrated workflow and
Right.
communication for it all to come together at the right time. But this has some implications that most just in time workflows don't, and that's people's lives. you know, uh, there's only so long I can obviously be on the table. Have you already administered anesthetic? I mean, am I actually out? I mean, I wouldn't expect they would start that, right? Or would they? I mean, would it go that far without having the tray that they need to cut into me?
Yes, Grant, it does happen from time to time, unfortunately.
Mm.
And that's why we need sterile processing subject matter experts, and that's why those experts need to shine a light on helping our industry out in these major ways. Because I've visited 40 plus hospitals the last couple of years, and there are many of those hospitals that I would not want to have surgery in. Just being
So,
honest.
so let me ask.
Yeah.
Currently, you just were at 40 hospitals, or how many of them have uh, that sterile processing department on site?
At this point in America, 90% of hospitals are performing sterile processing within the hospital itself. Um,
And so the question is there a trend to a service?
there is.
It seems like that's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, hell, they've been doing, I mean, come on, man, they've been doing uniforms and rugs, right? Laundering uniforms, laundering your carpets. I mean, for years.
That's right.
And it's not to try to, you know, belittle and compare them to cleaning rugs, but I mean, it certainly seems like something that could be done at scale with larger investment on the front end, maybe, but be able to accommodate that scale, uh, keep everything sterile, wrap them up,
Yes.
deliver them, you know.
Yes. And everything that we've talked about, even up to this point, can
I
be.
mean, because then you could put it in. I guess the only thing, if I think this through, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Michael, but
Yes,
it
sir.
seems like
It's okay.
the one thing might be today I have four, and if I have to give it to you and you don't have it back to me as quickly as I can do it myself, I need to have four more,
Yes.
right? And so there,
Yes.
and
You're
maybe
talking
that's not,
surgical supply chain. You're talking
yeah,
about
yeah,
prioritization, planning
yeah.
the next day to
As
communicate.
best you can. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
most of your surgeries are known, other than the ER, where someone comes in and needs something now, right? That's different. But
Yes.
most surgeries are scheduled, know what the tray is going to look like, know what the
Yes.
workup is, know everything. So,
Yes, and for the most part that works out very well. But there are AI technologies, softwares, systems that will help that can help, especially with vendor instrumentation, and that is instrumentation that the hospital doesn't own. It's rather expensive, and they don't perform enough surgeries of the particular kind to render them
mm,
purchasing one for the hospital itself.
right.
So it's hard communicating with the vendors because a lot of times the vendors have couriers, and those couriers and those vendors are not communicating very well. And sometimes the couriers that are working for the vendors to deliver the instrumentation to the various hospitals don't
Mm,
even know what they're picking up. So there
mm,
are a lot of communication issues that we do need to solve. And again, that's why I'm in this industry, because there's a lot of opportunity. My daughter had a liver transplant a couple years ago. The
mm,
first thing I think about isn't the physician's competence, but rather, are the sterile processing professionals being supported? Do they have the right resources? Because I've been to so many
mm.
nationwide now, and they don't have what they need, and the manager isn't able to manage those departments effectively because usually they're being misunderstood, and the expectations haven't been clarified.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, man, as someone who's, I've certainly had my bouts with surgery and different injuries, and my kids and family members. And I think it's one of those things that people rarely think about, right? I
If
mean, I think there's more thought given to uh, receiving anesthesia, and whether or not it's going to be properly administered, or you
Mhm.
know I don't, I could be wrong, but I know I speak for myself. That's something that I don't give as many. I just don't think, kind of wonder, are they clean? I mean, I it's one of those huge assumptions that you make when you go into a hospital, I think.
Yeah,
um,
well
you
said.
know
You know, what you just said reminded me of a brand new process. Well, for me, it was brand new at the time in Utah about 5 years ago, where the perioperative leader said, "Michael, we're going to start having this SPD leader go into the patient's rooms prior to surgery to ensure them that their sterile processing department is effective and their instruments will be sterile and ready for surgery." I thought that
hmm
was really great. You know,
yeah.
it was awkward in a way at first because I was new to it, and but I didn't. You know, I struck up some great conversations, met some great people, and most people just said thank you so much, and there
Yeah.
were a few that really went above and beyond and said, "Wow, we know what you do. We really appreciate it. We know you're misunderstood and
Yeah.
undervalued, and thank you for coming in to taking this time." And I think it really was great for the overall patient experience.
So I'm curious if you have any data. I know I'm just shooting from the hip here, but
Sure.
um, how much does this occur? Infections from the hospital, not because I had it, right? I mean,
That's a great question too. So Grant,
because that's gotta, be the that's the fuel for you, certainly, from a reduced risk by having a better sterile equipment, sterile
yeah,
processing department, right?
absolutely. So there's a lot of different challenges in SPD. There's a lot of different failures. What is the if we're talking about what is the infection rate that can be traced back to the sterile processing department nationwide? I'm not sure of that number. However, one of the reasons why I'm not sure of that number is because it's very difficult to
Oh, I
trace an
imagine.
infection back to sterile processing. Now,
Yeah.
there are legal cases, and I have a mentor in Sean Flynn, and he has represented different people that have been in cases that are involving sterilization and practices that were inappropriate and practices that were misunderstood. There's a hospital that I love, Barnes Jewish Hospital. I was formidably trained there after the Army. My 3 years I spent in the United States Army. The first employer that I had was Barnes Jewish Hospital, one of the most phenomenal hospitals in the country. Gave my daughter an amazing liver transplant. They they taught me a lot of what I know today, and now they're in the news primarily due to people misunderstanding the difference between rusted instruments and instruments that have staining on them. So
Hmm.
you have to have people like me come in to help train folks to understand the difference between pitting, rusting, staining. And a lot of people don't know those because they've been getting by for so long without questioning so many things. And the industry is becoming more aware of these issues that have really been there for quite some time.
I'm looking up. I just did a quick little search, and it says, while not every SSI is caused by the SPD, the department is the backbone of prevention. The 5% rule research indicates up to 5% of all surgical patients will develop a surgical site infection.
Yes, sir.
Interesting.
And if
And
we have not done our due diligence in one of the processes that renders a tray sterile,
listen to
then
this
that,
one, the adherence gap. I'm sorry.
no, it's
I,
okay.
I it says a 2025 study found that hospitals with poor adherence to sterile protocols, including cleaning and processing, had
Yes.
an SSI rate of 36.7% compared to just 6.7 in facilities with strict adherence.
Wow. Wow. Interesting.
And that's the NIH
NIH,
is,
that's a
yeah.
valid source.
So that's a real reference. That's
Thank you for saying
wow.
that. Yeah,
That's
actually,
but I mean
I looked at that.
that's big, and
Dude,
I think clearly justifies a role for an advocate for that kind of hygiene within the health infrastructure for sure.
I appreciate that, Grant. We are becoming more noticed as an industry, especially as technologies change. And again, the AI, the automation, um, the different, well, just to be transparent with you, for new problems, you need new solutions. And there,
Yeah,
we've been talking about these problems in this podcast so far, and we have a new generation of people coming in, and their work ethic is different. We have people that have all that institutional knowledge, that colloquial wisdom, and they're
yeah,
retiring. And a lot of
yeah,
hospitals let them go without getting that information out of them. And
yeah.
so it's I'll have a job for a while, Grant.
Well, one of the things I'm reading about is the internal gig models and apps that allow techs to pick up shifts like Uber drivers to help prevent burnout, which I
We
thought
just
was,
did that at the last hospital I was at. It's so hard to find competent technicians now that, we will go above and beyond not only to get them to work and take them back home, but to do everything we can to make them retained, So to establish that relationship nowadays is very difficult, though, because there's also those expectations, productivity and quality. So you
right.
have to produce a certain amount of quality trays in order to be a competent technician.
Mm,
So it's very difficult nowadays to manage a department if you don't have the interdependent support from HR, facilities, biomed, and surgical services, perioperative departments, the OR. And if one of those chains is missing, then your sterile processing department will not be as effective.
yeah, yeah. And so goes into the black hole, the dungeon, it gets sterilized, or it gets clean and able to be touched and then
Yes.
sterilized.
So first it's soiled. At the point of use, it should be sprayed and separated, all the instruments themselves, the soiled ones from the ones that weren't touched. And that's where it starts. So it starts actually in the operating room, the cleaning
Yep, got it.
process.
So we're all done. Take it apart. So where I'm going is the the person that creates the tray.
Yes, the technician.
That's a different person than everything up to tray assembly.
Usually. Now, there are
You
some small surgery centers that you might be the guy in decontamination, and then you
right,
come out of decontamination and you're the same guy that's going to
right.
touch the same tray in assembly.
Got it. But most of the time, I suspect, right? That's which, and what I'm getting to, Michael, is there's a clear delineation that seemingly supports the idea of having a service. It's, you know, um, interesting because it seems like that uh, there's enough core use
Hmm.
that truck could drive around and pick up dirty and drop
Right.
off clean, as
Yeah,
as a as a service.
absolutely. I have colleagues that are talking about starting companies right now, primarily due to their own experience, having poor experiences with, receiving instrumentation that was soiled, that should not have been soiled, and just not receiving the instrumentation that they needed due to the fact that the couriers themselves did not know, through a poor communication process. And there's a lot of problems like that. And there are, unfortunately, more hospitals shutting down every year due to sterile processing failures.
What's so? What's the most difficult instrument to clean right now?
I would say the Da Vinci arms, and then there's vendor ortho, high level ortho instrumentation that are difficult to take apart. The truth is, Grant, that a lot of people that are creating these instruments, they're not thinking about the end user, or they might be thinking about the end user and the patient, but not thinking about the person that's going to be decontaminating that instrument after use.
Reuse
Yes, sir.
or preparation for reuse, because I mean, that instrument, the Da Vinci whatever, what
Right.
is that? Talk about that
So
for
the
a
Da
second.
Vinci robot. So there's these amazing procedures that are being done now with very little effort from the physician. So a lot of these cases are laparoscopic. They are minimally invasive, amazing procedures, leaving a very small scar behind.
Hmm.
They are the future, and they're very difficult to clean. And so it takes a lot of attention to detail, a lot of precision, special brushes, techniques that require a lot of training. And yeah, it's amazing. The future is here already. We are using robotic technology now. It's amazing.
Yeah, and so what about this new standard for water quality sterilization,
We're touching
ST
on everything.
108?
We're touching on everything. We've talked about a lot of things here. We're almost
What's
comprehensive now.
what's ST 108?
Right. SC 108 is a standard. Really, it's a guideline. It's, I don't want to get
My notes
controversial.
say it's a huge headache for guys like you or your department.
I love it. And here's the reason why is because it's not about Michael Compton's opinion. It's an industry standard. And though it's a guideline, the CMS, which is a government industry will utilize they'll usually utilize a third party like the Joint Commission or DMV to verify that hospitals are adhering to ST 108, ST 109,
And
all
tell
these
me what
different
that is. Explain it
these
to me because I don't know what it is.
yeah.
Obviously, it has to do with water quality.
Right. Well, Amy is the governing agency for sterile processing, and they have different recommendations that I call them guidelines. They can also be referred to as standards, depending on if you're going to create a policy based upon the Amy guidelines. But long
Hmm.
story short, if you're not following Amy, you should have a really good reason why not to, because these are the doctors and the lawyers and the nurses that have subject matter expertise of hundreds of years combined
Sure.
experience that meet together ever so often. And one of the recommendations that we are all talking about in this industry right now is ST 108, because the water quality has been a big issue in so many hospitals the last couple of years. In
Mm.
fact, I would say that is probably the biggest issue that I've been tackling the last year and a half um, in my consultant journey.
When you say water quality, what water that you're
Mhm.
using? Which water is of
Mhm.
concern? The water that's being used for drinking, the water that's being used for cleaning. What water, or just water? The water in general.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Grant. It's really both. So it's the water in general it needs to be filtered, and then also the water in sterile processing needs even a higher level of filtering. So usually we're using DI water. We're using reverse osmosis water for the clean drinking. But for the
Hmm.
sterile processing, we're using even a higher level water that takes a water system, a very expensive water system that
Right.
needs ongoing maintenance and the water itself needs to be tested ever so often according to these guidelines that Amy has established. And most hospitals have not opened up that book in quite some time until just recently.
Pandora's box. It sounds like they don't want to open it up. So, um,
Perhaps.
so the water you're talking about then is the water that's specifically used by sterile processing.
Correct.
Again, it just seems like if I've got to have special water for the basement dungeon guys, there's an outsourced business there. I keep going back to that. I don't know. It
There
just
is.
seems very
Well, we do. So, Grant, we do outsource that. Almost every hospital. In fact, I don't know of many hospitals that are managing their water systems alone. So
Yeah,
most hospitals go through an outsource third party, and they maintain the system for us. We just alert them when we need them to come in and change the tanks. But it's there. It is more complex than that. And
sure. I guess I'm referring, Michael,
mhm,
to the outsource of the, if you've got a requirement for a special kind of water,
mhm.
if you've got a requirement, again, I'm back to the bigger service being outsourced altogether, the sterilization service being
Yes,
outsourced
sir.
completely and
I'm an
totally,
advocate.
because then the hospital doesn't have to have that special water used just for sterilization, or is it some other places they need it?
Yeah,
I,
I
I
mean,
mean,
you can argue for that too. I think the bigger argument for offsite reprocessing is that the hospitals are not managing it well. Most
hmm
hospitals, if they're being honest with themselves, they're not managing sterile processing well. So when you have people that are fully dedicated in their own space without any distraction,
hmm,
I trust that, and I know a company that's doing it very well. They're called Instrumentum, and they are in America, providing a great product. They're still humble, and I say that in other words to say that they are still learning and they're still growing, and they're
sure,
listening to their clients. They're listening to the industry. They're paying their technicians well. They have great leadership. They aren't rushing to the shiny object. They're learning about it. They're
mm,
but they do see, obviously, because they're in the offsite reprocessing business, that the future is offsite reprocessing. And I trust that it is as well, as a sterile processing leader that has seen how difficult it is firsthand over and over to manage an SPD that's so misunderstood, that's
mm,
so overstretched, that it's having a hard time finding competent leaders, that have competent leaders retiring, and all at the same time, where hospitals are not making as much money as they
yeah.
once were, and hospitals are facing a lot of challenges that they weren't facing just prior to COVID.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think, the whole AI thing is huge as it moves more into robotics, more into vision, and the application, you know, clearly, to have the sophisticated tools to be able to see like an eagle instead of like me, right? With that kind of clarity, um,
That's right.
because we're there, right? I mean, we're there,
Well,
and
we
so
need these tools because they're going to help us with, especially with the C-suite, say, hey, we need this amount of technicians because we're performing this amount of cases, requiring this amount of instruments, and we're overstretching our employees, and they're having to turn around instrumentations. Grant, we were talking about the actual process, the chain, the link that renders an instrument sterile from being covered in bioburden or
right,
gross soil prior to the decontamination. Well, these 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 technicians are under all this pressure to turn over basic instrumentation, primarily because the hospital doesn't want to acquire more instrumentation because of how
right,
expensive it is. But a
yeah,
lot of times, if they would acquire that instrumentation based upon good solid data, they'll be able to perform more surgeries because they have more instruments to perform those surgeries. So if
right.
you can show them that using quality data, which AI is doing even now, and I think it's getting better at,
Yeah.
we're going to be able to ensure that we have adequate instrumentation to do more surgeries.
Yeah, well, there's no question the value of the data analysis in everything is one of the key differentiators with AI, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's, and I think uh, we're using it to look at things differently, to see things differently, to assemble things differently, all with higher, better, improved outcomes, or generally, so it's able to figure them out anyway. But this has been fascinating,
Thank you, Dean. Same.
just to, you know, and I think certainly from an innovation side, I can see there's a lot going on there, but it also is for the first time I can say in a while I've given some thought to the dirty side of my surgery,
Yeah.
or what it's just it was
Thank you, man.
enlightening and a good conversation. So I
Thank
appreciate you
you, Grant.
reaching out to me, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Thanks for allowing me to give you a high level overview of what sterile processing is and
Yeah.
shining the light on our industry and in a time that we need it shine more than ever before. So thank you so much, Grant. I really
Yeah.
appreciate the time, and you're an amazing man. Hope to be on the
Oh,
show
thanks.
again.
Thanks. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you very much, Michael. Great. You never know who you meet on an airplane.
That's right.
So I appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you found this interesting. I know I certainly did, learning more about SPD and sterile processing and what goes on in our healthcare system. So thanks for listening. Please share it, like it, tell your friends, subscribe, and we'll look forward to having you back on the next episode of Talking Innovation. Thanks so very much.